North of Italy, Lake Iseo, a warm summer's day. It would be great to have a motorboat. This is the Invictus 280 GT. It takes one glance at the marvellous flagship to understand that this is no ordinary boat. This partially upside-down bow appears sharp and massive at the same time, and the sides of the hull are like that too, widened to allow for more space inside, but at the same time elegantly cut with a slender profile, giving character to this model. For the best results regarding navigation at sea, it's important that the hull is completely immersed in the water, right up to the last centimetre. Even at the bow, this ensures greater stability. I like the contoured seats with the support of the sturdy brackets, and I like this dashboard. With one single glance, I can read all the instruments. The engine is a V8 Volvo Penta with 5.7 litre displacement and 8 cylinders, 320 horsepower, duo-prop drive with twin counter-rotating propellers. These electronic devices help too, trim and cruise control. It's an elegant boat even while driving, a quality that promises you'll cruise with class.
Se dipendesse da me, navigherei sempre a questa velocità. 3.800 giri minuto e...
If it were up to me, I would always navigate at this speed, 25 knots at 3,800 RPM. But I think Volvo, Penta and Invictus want to show you exactly how fast this powerboat can go. And I won't disappoint them.
Diamo un po' di trim e contemporaneamente controlliamo la velocità.
Let's give it a bit of trim and simultaneously check our speed. We're at 5,600 RPM, 37 knots. The hull is slightly lurching. Let's try removing some trim. Here we go. The balance has improved. The hull is much more stable, so we must not exaggerate with the tilt of angle of the stern drive. The speed has decreased slightly. We're at 36.3 knots. Therefore, if you want to reach top speed, give it trim to arrive at 37 knots. If instead you want to cruise a little more comfortably, lower the trim and reach the milder 36 knots. It doesn't change much in terms of performance. The crossed shield is a symbol of defiance and protection, suggesting that this powerboat will defiantly challenge its competitors, even those of accomplished names. And as for protection, well, these high walls sure do the trick. This is a boat that should be appreciated for its details. I'll stop and show you. Every detail is tasteful and precise, first in its design and later in its creation. Cushions with buckles, as if they were suitcases or bags, teak wood on the gunwale, one-of-a-kind cleats, custom-made steering wheel, a kitchen with the possibility of adding a fridge, and a sofa convertible into sunbeds. The cushions are extremely comfortable. This speedboat was made to enjoy basking in the sun and going for a swim far from shore. Therefore, it must have an ample aft platform. Below the deck is a lovely suite, very bright with elegant tapestry and an atmosphere of grandeur. In the passageway, a cabinet accommodates the fridge, which precedes a small dinette, and on the starboard a separate bathroom. Since this model is comparable of the finest of luxury yachts, Invictus has given rise to the TT series, with the same aesthetic features of the GT series, but formatted as a tender, hence a lowered deck and extra seating.
Invictus racconta qualcosa di nuovo attraverso anche queste forme molto pulite e comunque non troppo schematiche. Definirei comunque organiche.
Invictus portrays something new through these very clean, fresh shapes, and yet shapes that are not systematic. I define it almost organic, shapes that look sculptured by hand, not rigid nor square. But at the same time, I decided to forego the more decorative, frilly patterns that were perhaps a few years ago in fashion, and chose to create a more clean, pure shape to perhaps give more attention to the power, the substance, the strength, via the thought that is given to each detail, the buckles, the materials, the fabrics.
Questo significa che ci si vuole classificare.
I feel that this boat should be classified on a slightly higher level. It stimulates the curiosity and attention of a boat owner who, even while choosing a smaller boat, has the desire to stand out because he has the sensibility to understand that even a slight detail can alter the presence of the seemingly small boat to parallel the greatness of a larger equivalent. The FX series by Invictus includes recreational motorboats of 19 to 27 feet that are enhanced in the FX versions with stern drive engines.
FX e SX condividono la X, appunto questo taglio più sportivo. Di fatto
The FX and SX series share the X, and by that I mean it's more of a sporty boat that you might use even as a fishing boat. The FX has an outboard engine and can be set up as a fisherman, a beautiful boat because it evokes those technical aspects that are made for a true fisherman, meaning the addition of a live well bucket, a hardtop and a lot more instrumentation.
L'SX più dell'FX ha anche la scelta di un colore che vuole essere addirittura la memoria di classicità e quindi pur avendo una base che in un certo qual modo ricorda il prodotto tecnico, hanno poi una definizione, l'SX.
The SX has a range of colours that convey a simple classic beauty, and despite having the shape of a mechanical product, the SX retains a somewhat artisan element, with deep cognac-coloured upholstery that reminds one of equestrian styles.
Ecco, si va un po' fuori dal mondo della nautica, un po' per anche cercare di solleticare il cliente in quelli che sono I codici stilistici e di passione.
It goes beyond the world of watercraft and continues to stimulate the interest of the customer's desire for both sport and style.
The
concept that inspired this dual configuration is very unique. The hull is the same. It's a deep V-shaped fisherman with a long and slender bow and a sharp stern, efficiently cutting through the waves of the choppy sea ahead. Another unique feature provided by the FX and SX series of Invictus is the convenience of choosing the engine type that you need, outboard or stern drive. But not only that, you can also choose a desired layout of the deck, from something more recreational to that of a fisherman, being able to change your mind even after a few years of ownership, because perhaps in the meantime you've become passionate about fishing.
Ora immaginate che nella versione Fisherman.
Now imagine that in the Fisherman versions, all of these furnishings could be removed to make room for various fishing activities. Under the bridge console there is a dressing room complete with a small bathroom. Above you can install a T-top and, if desired, rod holders at the aft. The elevated sides of the boat are tall, not only to provide security for children on board, they're cushioned to ensure that even if you lose your balance and fall, you'll know you'll land on something soft.
La modularità di questo progetto vi permette di cambiare gli allestimenti.
This design allows you to change the outfitting of the interior. For example, instead of this very elegant cockpit with its luxurious finish, you can choose to install a sport finish bench instead. And back here, in place of the kitchen, you can put in an icebox and a chest of drawers for the lures.
Supponiamo che abbiate comprato la barca.
Suppose you bought the boat for a leisurely outing and a swim every so often, but in the meantime you became passionate about fishing. In that case, you can remove the sofa and install a live well.
L'Invictus 270 FX è un prodotto...
The Invictus 270 FX is 100% Italian, from the design to the construction, and the model that we are testing today is equipped with a 250 horsepower Honda outboard engine.
Ai bassi regimi e a basse andature, la timoneria è un po' dura.
At low speeds, the steering is a bit hard. Perhaps it'd be worth having an electro-hydraulic pump.
Ha un buon assetto, sin
The
dall'ingresso.
trim is good, even while planing, which begins at around 12 knots.
La strumentazione è interfacciata con
The dashboard is interconnected with GPS plotter, so on the monitor you can observe all the operating data of the motor, and in that way you can also see what you're consuming.
Siamo a 20 nodi, a 3000.
We're at 20 knots at 3,600 RPM, and we're travelling 0.7 miles per litre, or if you prefer, 26 litres per hour.
A 4000 giri il motore fuoribordo.
At 4,000 RPM, the Honda outboard engine of 250 horsepower is, so far, relatively silent. The speed has increased to 23 knots, but the consumption has remained quite low, at 0.7 miles per litre.
L'assetto non è cambiato, la scia è abbastanza piatta, non c'è bisogno ancora di utilizzare il trim.
The trim has not changed, and the wash wake is fairly flat. There is no need to use the trim yet, but if you want to try to raise the angle of the outboard engine a bit, you'll see that without even touching the accelerator, the speed increases to 150 RPM and goes up a knot.
È a partire dai 4500 giri minuto che il motore comincia ad assumere tutta una...
It's only from 4,500 RPM that the motor begins to take on a whole different grit, and the speeds become more interesting. 30 knots. This is a nice cruising speed for a boat this size. We're on a lake, and the waters are quite still. But imagine being on sea with a few waves. It would be a lot of fun, even thrilling at this speed.
Su questo fuoribordo è
This
stata...
outboard engine was assembled with a 17-inch propeller, which adds a rather interesting characteristic when accelerating, and also elevated cruising speeds. But is that the most it can do? What is the maximum performance of this craft?
Quando si va forte è sempre meglio guardare bene davanti, anche perché qui sul lago stanno facendo sci nautico.
While going at these speeds, it's important to look far ahead, also because here on the lake some people are water skiing. Keeping an eye on the dashboard, we're at 5,750 RPM and the speed is 38 knots. But at this time the boat is very light, it's almost empty. There's only me and the cameraman, a few litres of fuel and nothing else. On this boat, you're able to install two 150 horsepower outboard engines, if desired, and I must say that this test has proved that one outboard does not do it justice. So go ahead and install a second. It will give you some satisfaction, guaranteed.